You know that person who seems completely unaffected by drama, manipulation, or emotional attacks? They're not cold or heartless, like everyone thinks. They've discovered something that makes them practically immune to psychological harm. And it's the exact opposite of what self-help gurus tell you to do. Instead of building walls or avoiding pain, they've learned to do something that sounds crazy, but works like magic. And the best part, you can learn this same technique, but it requires facing something most people spend their whole lives running from: the pain avoidance trap. Here's the thing, most people get completely backwards about emotional pain. The harder you try to avoid getting hurt, the more damage you actually take. Think about everyone you know who's constantly building walls, avoiding difficult conversations, and shutting down at the first sign of conflict. These are the same people who fall apart when someone says the wrong thing or triggers them in just the right way. We're taught that emotional strength means never showing weakness. Keep your guard up. Don't let anyone see you vulnerable. Build those walls higher and thicker until nothing can touch you. Sounds logical, right? The truth is, every single wall you build creates more places for pain to sneak through. Let me explain what's really happening inside your mind when you avoid dealing with emotional wounds. Think of it like physical scar tissue. When you cut yourself and don't clean the wound properly, it doesn't heal right. The scar tissue that forms is actually weaker than the original skin. It's sensitive, painful, and breaks open easily. Your emotional wounds work the same way. When you refuse to process hurt, betrayal, or disappointment, you create weak spots in your psyche that others can exploit without even trying. You know that person who seems tough on the outside, but completely loses it when someone mentions their ex, their family, or that thing that happened years ago? That's unprocessed pain talking. They spent so much energy avoiding those feelings that they never learned how to handle them. Now those emotions control them from the shadows. One wrong word, and their whole defense system crumbles. Here's what happens when you try to push painful emotions away. They don't disappear, they go underground and start growing stronger. You might think you've moved on from that betrayal or rejection, but your subconscious mind is keeping score. It's creating triggers you don't even know exist. Someone says something that sounds similar to what hurt you before, and suddenly you're reacting like you're back in that original situation. The people who seem emotionally bulletproof aren't the ones who never get hurt. They're the ones who learn to face their pain head-on instead of running from it. When someone tries to push their buttons, those buttons simply don't work anymore because they've already been pressed, examined, and understood. There's nothing hidden left to attack. Think about it this way. If you're terrified of someone discovering your insecurities, you'll spend massive amounts of energy hiding them. But what happens when someone figures them out anyway? You're defenseless. Because you never learned to be okay with those parts of yourself. You handed them the exact roadmap to hurt you. This avoidance strategy backfires in every important relationship you'll ever have. Your partner can't get close to you because you're too busy protecting yourself. Your friends walk on eggshells because they know certain topics will set you off. You end up isolated and still in pain, except now you're alone with it too. The psychological reality is simple but uncomfortable. As long as you try to avoid pain, it will continue to control you. Every emotion you refuse to feel becomes a weapon someone else can use against you. Every wound that you won't acknowledge becomes a weak point waiting to be exploited. But there's an ancient technique that completely flips this process on its head. Instead of avoiding your darkness, you do something that sounds dangerous, but creates true emotional immunity. Jung's shadow integration method. Carl Jung figured out something about the human mind that most therapists will never share with you. He discovered that the parts of yourself you hate most actually contain your greatest potential for strength. Jung called this your shadow, and it's not what you think it is. Your shadow isn't just your bad qualities. It's every part of yourself you've rejected, hidden, or pretended doesn't exist. That anger you push down when someone disrespects you. The fear you won't admit when facing challenges. The sadness you cover up with fake smiles. The envy you feel but never acknowledge. All of these emotions you've been taught to suppress are sitting in your shadow. and they're making you weak. Here's what most people don't understand about their shadow. It contains both your flaws and your buried strengths. Maybe you learned that showing anger makes you bad, so you stuffed it down. Now you can't stand up for yourself. Maybe you decided that wanting attention was selfish, so you hid that need. Now you can't ask for what you deserve. Every emotion you reject becomes a blind spot that others can exploit. Shadow integration works differently than what you've been taught. Instead of fighting these dark emotions, you acknowledge them as part of who you are. You stop pretending you don't get angry, jealous, or scared. You admit these feelings exist without acting on them destructively. This isn't about becoming a worse person. It's about becoming a complete person. Let me show you how this creates emotional bulletproofing. When someone tries to make you angry, and you've already accepted your anger, their attempt has no power. You know you can get angry. You've felt that emotion fully. There's nothing for them to trigger, because you're not hiding from that part of yourself anymore. The same thing happens with your insecurities, fears, and wounds. Think about someone who's integrated their shadow. When you attack their appearance, they don't get defensive, because they already know their flaws and have made peace with them. When you try to make them jealous, it doesn't work, because they've acknowledged that jealousy lives inside them too. When you attempt to shame them, the shame slides off, because they've already faced their shame and moved through it. This is why integrated people seem so calm during conflicts. They're not defending hidden parts of themselves. There's nothing secret left to protect. Someone can call them selfish, weak, or stupid, and they might think, yeah, sometimes I am those things, and that's okay. The attack loses all its power because there's no resistance to feed off of. The process requires facing everything you've spent years avoiding. You have to sit with your anger until you understand where it comes from. You have to feel your fear without running away from it. You have to acknowledge your selfishness, your pettiness, and your ugly thoughts without judging them as wrong. This sounds terrifying because you've been taught that these emotions make you a bad person. Jung's shadow integration technique makes you emotionally bulletproof because you become comfortable with your whole self. When there's nothing left to hide, there's nothing left for others to use against you. You respond to attacks from a place of clarity instead of reactivity. You make decisions based on awareness instead of unconscious triggers. But here's the biggest mistake people make when they try this approach. They think integration means expressing every shadow impulse without restraint. The control illusion. Here's the most backwards thing about emotional protection. The harder you try to control how others treat you, the more control they actually have over how you feel. You're not protecting yourself. You're handing them the remote control to your emotional state. Think about how exhausting it is to manage everyone around you. You're constantly watching their tone of voice, analyzing their facial expressions, trying to predict their moods. You walk into every conversation with a mental checklist of things they can't say or do. If you want to feel okay, you're basically running a full-time emotional management company for other people, and you're the only employee. Here's what's really happening when you need others to behave a certain way for you to feel stable. You've given them all your power. Your happiness depends on their mood. Your confidence relies on their approval. Your peace of mind requires their cooperation. You've become an emotional prisoner, and they don't even know they're holding the keys. Look at how this plays out in real relationships. Your partner has to speak to you in exactly the right tone, or you feel attacked. Your boss needs to acknowledge your work, or you question your worth. Your friends must include you in plans, or you feel rejected. You're not living your life anymore. You're reacting to everyone else's choices and hoping they make the right ones for your emotional well-being. The psychological trap is simple but brutal. When you expect the world to accommodate your emotional needs, you set yourself up for constant disappointment. People will always behave according to their own needs, moods, and circumstances. They're not thinking about protecting your feelings. They're living their own lives, and you're sitting there waiting for them to make you feel better. Here's what truly strong people understand about external events. They only hurt you if they activate something unresolved inside you. When someone criticizes you, and it destroys your confidence, the problem isn't their criticism. The problem is that part of you already believes what they're saying. When someone ignores you and it ruins your day, the issue isn't their behavior. The issue is that you need their attention to feel valuable. The shift from external control to internal awareness changes everything. Instead of trying to eliminate your triggers, you start recognizing them. You notice when someone's tone makes you defensive. You catch yourself needing approval. You see when you're trying to control how others respond to you. This awareness doesn't make the feelings go away, but it shows you where your real work needs to happen. The freedom that comes from stopping this control game is incredible. You can have conversations without managing the other person's reactions. You can express your opinions without needing agreement. You can face criticism without your world falling apart. You can be ignored without questioning your worth. You stop being afraid of how others might treat you because their treatment doesn't determine your emotional state anymore. When you depend on others' behavior to feel okay, you trap yourself in a cycle where their actions control your inner world. You react to their moods, decisions, and opinions like they're emergency situations that require immediate emotional responses. You've given them authority over your happiness without them even asking for it. The truth is, trying to control how others treat you actually increases your suffering because you're focusing on the wrong target. You can't control them, but you can understand why their actions affect you so deeply. But there's one final transformation that takes this understanding and turns your deepest emotional pain into unshakable inner strength. Pain as power. The people who seem most unshakable didn't get that way by avoiding pain. They learned something most people refuse to accept. They discovered how to transform their deepest wounds into their greatest sources of strength. This isn't some motivational speaker nonsense. This is a fundamental shift in how you relate to suffering itself. We're taught that emotional pain is the enemy, something to eliminate, medicate, or push through as quickly as possible. The entire self-help industry is built on this myth. But what if everything you've been told about pain is wrong? What if the thing you're running from is actually the thing that could set you free? Here's the radical shift that changes everything. Instead of treating suffering as your enemy, you start treating it as a messenger. Pain isn't random. It's not punishment. It's information. Your emotional wounds are telling you exactly where you need to grow and what parts of yourself need attention. Jung understood this when he said that pain is the messenger of the soul, the alarm of the unconscious, and the language that the self uses to get your attention. Think about depression like Jung described it. Depression is like a lady in black. If she appears, don't push her away, invite her to sit down, offer her a coffee, and listen to what she has to say. This isn't about wallowing in misery. This is about understanding what your pain is trying to teach you. When you feel rejected, that feeling shows you where your self-worth depends on others. When you feel betrayed, that wound reveals where you gave your power away. When you feel abandoned, that pain points to where you abandoned yourself first. The transformation process works like emotional immunity. When you fully feel and integrate an emotional wound, it can never hurt you the same way again. Think of it like a vaccine. You expose yourself to a controlled version of the virus, so your body builds antibodies. When you sit with your pain, instead of running from it, you build emotional antibodies. The next time someone tries to trigger that same wound, your system recognizes it and knows how to handle it. This creates genuine confidence that doesn't depend on external validation or perfect circumstances. You stop needing others to treat you well, for you to feel okay. You stop requiring ideal situations to maintain your peace. You become stable from the inside out because you've faced everything within yourself and survived it. Here's the final paradox that most people miss. When you're willing to feel everything, nothing can truly hurt you anymore. Not because you become numb or cold, not because you stop caring, but because you've already been to the bottom and found solid ground there. You've felt the worst things you can feel and discovered they don't actually destroy you. They transform you. This is the step that transforms emotional pain into unshakable inner strength. You stop running toward pleasure and away from pain. You start moving toward truth and growth. regardless of whether it feels good or bad. You realize that your capacity to feel pain is directly connected to your capacity to feel joy, love, and connection. This isn't about becoming cold or shutting down your emotions. This is about becoming complete. When you embrace every part of yourself, including the parts that hurt, you become whole. And when you're whole, there's nothing left for others to break. Now, here's the truth about true emotional immunity. It's not about being untouchable or building thicker armor. It's about being so complete that there's nothing left for others to exploit. When you understand your triggers, your patterns, your wounds, the actions of others lose the power to destroy you. Stop running from your pain and start running toward it. With curiosity instead of fear, your wounds contain the exact information you need to become free. Every emotion you've avoided holds a piece of your power that you gave away. When you embrace everything within you, you become truly free from the power others have over your emotional state. Now, if you've gone through a similar experience and can relate to this video, consider liking and subscribing to this channel for more related content on human psychology, where you'll learn how to maneuver the human mind and become an elite mentality individual. I'll see you in the next video. Till then, stay sharp.